Saddam Hussein reportedly moving chemical weapons to his front lines. The White House says war could come at any time, and the Allied war machine in the desert awaits the word to go. This is the CBS Evening News. Dan Rather reporting. Good evening. U.S. forces are poised to strike at Iraq. It's the day after deadline. A flurry of activity tonight in Washington amid new indications, no conclusive evidence but indications, that President Bush's order to use force against Saddam Hussein could come down at any moment if, indeed, it has not already been given. All of this comes amid new indications that Saddam Hussein may be trying to move chemical weapons within striking distance of U.S. and Allied forces in the desert, and no indication Saddam has made any move to comply with UN orders to quit Kuwait or else. On what may be a momentous evening for the United States, White House correspondent Wyatt Andrews begins our coverage. Wyatt?
Dan, at this very moment, the White House is still playing its waiting game, a mind game, if you will, primarily to sow doubt in the mind of Saddam Hussein. However, just within a few hours ago, the president did place a telephone call, CBS News has learned, to House Speaker Thomas Foley on the Gulf. That set off a flurry of meetings up on Capitol Hill. We do not know exactly what the call was about, and we do not know if it will set off any flurry of meetings here. On the record, the White House is saying that the president is, quote-unquote, approaching the hard decisions needed to use force. However, it's obvious from here, Dan, that war planning is going on, and the policy is still in place that war could begin at any time.
Waiting at least this one day past the deadline has played to the president's advantage. The French Parliament voted overwhelmingly to commit its troops to battle, while President Mitterrand, previously the West's most forceful advocate of compromise, glumly admitted today, guns will now talk. But waiting one more day also bought time for anti-war demonstrators across the country. To the protesters, every day without the loss of life is a sign of hope.
It's as though we have more time to get our point across. And I wanted to make use of that time.
And on that narrow point, the administration agrees. The United States dropped big hints today Saddam could still avoid an attack if he so much as promises to completely withdraw.
If there was an initiative or indication from Baghdad of a willingness to comply with those resolutions, that would have to be pursued.
The president himself today worked hard at seeming relaxed. At a meeting of education advisors, he laughed off suggestions he looked grim, told a reporter to lighten up, and made light of the simple question of how he felt.
What you see is what you get.
Tonight, more than at any time since World War II, the decision to launch a major Allied war in concert with other nations is in the hands of one man. And again, Dan, the White House is saying on the record that the president is close to his final decision and is, quote-unquote, steeled to make it. Dan?
Wyatt Andrews, thanks. CBS News Defense Department correspondent David Martin standing by at the Pentagon now with the latest from there. David?
Dan, within the last 48 hours, U.S. intelligence has picked up evidence that Saddam Hussein is taking his chemical weapons out of storage warehouses in Iraq and beginning to move them within range of targets inside Saudi Arabia. Now, that is significant because although the U.S. has always assumed Saddam was going to use chemical weapons if it came to war, there never has been any hard evidence that he had actually moved them into position. Now, if in fact that is what he is doing, or if the U.S. believes that is what he is doing, that would constitute a compelling reason, I think, for President Bush to strike very quickly, because catching those weapons while they are still congregated in warehouses would obviously be much more effective than having to go after them once they've been dispersed into the field. Saddam Hussein has already dispersed his air force. They are now spread about among 60 different airfields within Iraq. Those are the kinds of tactical factors that are going to affect the decision on timing, but there's a host of others. Weather, for instance. What is the weather over Baghdad tonight? But these are all tactical factors that determine timing. There is no one here in the Pentagon who doubts that the basic fundamental decision to strike has been made, and it has been made to go.
David Martin, thanks. Pope John Paul sent messages to President Bush and Saddam Hussein today saying war would not solve the problems of the Middle East and urging a last-minute effort at dialogue. No word of a response from either side. In Baghdad, the Iraqi news agency said Saddam met with his ruling council for the first time since the deadline expired, but the agency gave no other details. Veteran CBS News correspondent Alan Pizzi is in Baghdad.
When the deadline came, thick fog all but obscured clocks that don't work anyway. But it didn't really matter. Everyone here knew that this morning was it. At a girls' school, it was also examination day, starting with the bell, exactly at 8 a.m., midnight Eastern time. But politics, not exams, were on their minds.
So we lived the war. We were not terrified from anybody.
This Palestinian girl said her brother was in the army in Kuwait. By fighting for Saddam Hussein, he would be fighting for Palestine. Iraqi TV footage, purportedly shot yesterday, showed Saddam in Kuwait rallying his troops under the banner of no compromise. He told the soldiers, the Iraqis will stick to the slogan of ousting the infidels. And just to make sure any thoughts of last-minute diplomacy were dead, Saddam added, this is the final position from which we will not retreat. Baghdad itself showed no signs of war fever, but there were plenty of soldiers on their way to somewhere today, and buses and taxis were reportedly being commandeered to take them. For inspiration, soldiers had today's newspapers. The fingers are on the trigger, the military paper wrote, and Iraq's valiant men are awaiting the 0 hour to wage the most honorable battle in the history of mankind. The public mood was one of resignation. People tried to function as normally as possible, but it was clear that this wasn't a normal time, no matter that officially it was supposed to be. Markets were all but deserted. People stocked up their larders days, even weeks ago. Storekeepers and businessmen had plenty of time for lunch. And in public, the line is always the same. They fought Iran, they can take on America. From now on, every second that Iraqis remain safe will be seen here as a victory for Saddam Hussein. And while people are still willing to claim publicly that victory will be theirs no matter what the outcome, the quiet murmur of an old Iraqi acquaintance may have been closer to reality. It's all over, he said. It's finished. Alan Pizzi, CBS News, Baghdad.
There are unconfirmed reports tonight of, quote, flashes in the distance around Baghdad, unquote. Nobody knows if there's any significance to that. It's the kind of thing that makes everybody a little unsettled with the situation being what it is. There also are reports of heavy air traffic in and out of bases in Saudi Arabia tonight. For all U.S. forces in Arabia, combat practice today included live ammunition drills and waiting to hear whether orders for real combat would come next. Scott Pelley is there.
On deadline day, America's first strike weapons are armed and in the air. Pilots were briefed on the weather over Baghdad. There was no change in the forecast for Kuwait.
We continue to see Iraq occupying defensive positions, fortifying those positions, and not withdrawing from Kuwait.
Today in Saudi Arabia, the High Command listed the growing order of battle. 425,000 U.S. troops, more than 1,800 planes, 1,700 helicopters, 1,200 battle tanks, and 6 aircraft carrier battle groups.
We're prepared to carry out any orders the President directs.
Increasingly, training sounds and looks more like combat. In the Persian Gulf, British jets target the USS Wisconsin. The exercise delivers the feel of battle. Tonight, Desert Shield stands at the second highest state of alert.
We should consider that hostilities are imminent. Gentlemen, the bottom line is that the bell is about ready to ring. We need to make sure we're ready to answer it.
Now, many are ready for that bell, long since weary of the days in the desert.
I don't really wish for war, but I wish something would happen to get this thing over with, so everybody can go home.
You have a hard time countering that attitude because the shortest road home is through Baghdad.
Tonight, here in Saudi Arabia, there is no moon. This would be considered prime time for an American attack. We are standing near a large Saudi-American airbase, and over the last 35 or 40 minutes, we have counted approximately 20 fighter planes heading north, apparently heading toward Iraq. We cannot say what their mission is at this hour, but it appears a very large number of fighter planes has left the base heading north. Dan?
Thanks, Scott. And noting that we consider ourselves now to be in special CBS News coverage of the situation in and around the Persian Gulf. Coming up next on the CBS Evening News, Rita Braver on new defenses against terrorism in this country.
To get rid of her gray, my wife can spend 40 minutes. But I discovered the 5-minute hair coloring.
The revolutionary discovery called Just for Men from the leader in men's hair coloring. Simply apply Just for Men and in 5 minutes shampoo out.
Gray is blended away. The look of my natural color is back in 5 minutes. That was me, and it won't fade or wash out.
My hair takes forever, but you look great in just 5 minutes.
The look of your natural color in just 5 minutes with Just for Men.
Now's the time for Centrum Silver, because you're over 50 and you're out there swinging. Centrum Silver, a complete vitamin formula for your changing nutritional needs. Centrum Silver, it's a great time to be silver.
This is the sound of Unisom, the sound of sleep. With Unisom, you hit your pillow and fall asleep fast. Tonight, you can sleep more soundly with Unisom, America's #1 sleep aid.
I thought my husband Dan was perfectly healthy, but the doctor said his cholesterol level was 218. So we changed to a healthier diet, including no cholesterol Mazola, America's leading corn oil.
In a clinical study, a low-fat, low-cholesterol diet, including Mazola, reduced cholesterol an average of 17%.
Did Dan's cholesterol come down?
You bet. 100% pure Mazola corn oil. Together, we're beating cholesterol.
We're staying second by second with our coverage of what's happening in and around the Persian Gulf tonight. Saddam Hussein's threat to spread terror attacks to America are being taken especially seriously this evening by U.S. officials. Just how seriously is evident by the stepped-up security and rising concern all over the country. Rita Braver has our report on that.
The United States is in terror of terrorism. The country has gone on the defensive, placing new barriers around the Capitol today, canceling public tours of the White House and many other government buildings, cutting off open access to the New York Stock Exchange, tightening airport security.
There must be no battery-operated electrical devices indicated.
Congress, after intelligence briefings today, takes the need for security very seriously.
We do have to recognize that there is a very real likelihood that American citizens, American officials, American facilities are going to be targeted by terrorists if and when hostilities commence.
And the public is nervous too.
They have a reputation for terrorism, and I think it's something that we really need to be aware of.
I think that it's best that they take these precautions just in case.
Just in case is the reason behind much of this security, including special FBI command centers in many cities. For though Saddam has made broad threats against the U.S., there is no hard intelligence on specific targets.
I think we should all remember as Americans that any one of us has a greater chance of slipping and hurting ourselves in our bathtub than we do of ever being anywhere near a terrorist incident.
Nevertheless, the FBI is worried that sympathizers in this country could be ready to launch attacks at Saddam's behest or through their own zeal.
If any crazy person is willing to give his life, he can go forward at this time and commit an act that could harm people. So any of the security measures that we see taken around here at this time seem perfectly reasonable.
And the U.S. is not alone in its fear of terrorism. In Paris today, every piece of luggage was being checked. In London, armored vehicles now ring Heathrow Airport. Rita Braver, CBS News, Washington.
How will events in the Persian Gulf affect the national economy and your pocketbook? Clearly, they'll have far-reaching consequences. First, some background. The U.S. government today reported that inflation rose in 1990 at its sharpest rate in 9 years. The Commerce Department said that consumer prices jumped 6.1% during 1990, ending the year with a 0.3% rise during the month of December. Now, CBS News business correspondent Ray Brady looks at what may lie ahead.
In the past, wars have been a shot in the arm for the U.S. economy. World War II stoked up the assembly lines that turned out weapons at a record pace. That pumped money and jobs into an economy gripped by depression.
This is total war, everybody's war. Into the pockets of Americans, This war production is pouring $100 million a day.
That won't happen now. President Reagan built up huge stocks of arms, more than enough. Example, the U.S. says it has more than 1,200 tanks in the Middle East. Around 7,000 more are here in stock.
This is a war that will be fought with the existing stocks, with some heavy expenditures in other countries, which will drain away purchasing power from the United States.
President Bush is hoping for a quick win. His economic advisors told him this week a short war would send consumer confidence up, shortening the recession. But 6 months of war and war psychology would damage it.
This time around, war psychology depresses the consumer, they pull back in spending, and it's likely to make the current recession deeper and longer. This war could mean a loss of jobs instead of an increase in jobs, a very different picture from earlier wars.
Then there's that giant wild card, the price of oil. The Saudis plan to shut down fields near the Kuwait border. That's a quarter of their total production. And it's unknown just how much damage the Iraqis could do to the rest of the Saudi fields. While a short war would lower oil prices, a long war could double the price of oil to $60 a barrel. A drain of $100 billion a year on an American economy already in recession.
One warning, history has taught us that uncertainty rules during war. And in this war, there's no knowing what the political situation will be in the Middle East when the struggle is over, or how that will affect the supply of oil. Dan?
Thanks, Ray. Given the situation, which is, let me emphasize, at the moment, fluid to say the least, if any order has been given for a U.S. attack, it is not yet conclusively demonstrated that that is true. But with everything we've seen and heard around the Persian Gulf, we want to go now to CBS News correspondent Bob Schieffer, who covered the war in Vietnam, who is with our CBS News consultant, General George Christ of the United States Marines, retired, who helped fight the war in Vietnam and who commanded U.S. forces in the Persian Gulf before his retirement. Bob?
Dan, what little information we have at this point is simply that flashes of light have been reported on the horizon around Baghdad. Some have said that it appears that anti-aircraft fire is underway. General, with that scant information, what would you make of it? What would it appear is going on at this point?
Well, we know, Bob, that the first airstrikes are going to go in against airfields. Around Baghdad, there are a number of very, very important fields. So if they're going in after the missiles and those aircraft. They might not see the flashes of the bombs, but they could certainly see flashes. Also, our reconnaissance aircraft might be up there and be firing at them. But the first targets are going to be those missile defenses and those airfields, and they are around Baghdad.
So when we hear flashes of light being reported, that could be what? That could be tracer bullets, it could be...
Flashes could be ground anti-aircraft guns, it could be missiles going in the air, or it could be bombs and rockets coming down. It's hard to tell.
And we also have reports, I'm told, General, of increased activity around several U.S. air bases where American fighter planes are at this time. We don't know what to make of that at this point. The basic information, the only real information we have at this time, is that we have seen, or flashes of light have been reported around the outskirts of Baghdad. Okay, Dan, back to you.
Thanks, Bob. Joining us now from Washington, CBS News consultant, recently retired United States Air Force General Michael Dugan. This is General Dugan's first television interview since he was fired last September as the U.S. Air Force Chief of Staff for publicly and candidly discussing contingency plans for massive airstrikes against Baghdad. General, thank you for being with us this evening. You may have heard our Pentagon correspondent David Martin say that the decision to go may already have been made. And if so, what does this mean in practical terms?
Dan, it means that if the decision has been made, a very violent time for Iraqis and a very sad time for Americans.
General, if airstrikes are now happening, we have no empirical evidence that conclusively says that's so. If they began, what are likely to be the nature of the first strikes? Would it be a combination of airplanes and, say, Tomahawk missiles, or in the beginning only airplanes?
There probably would be a mixture of assets brought to bear early on in the campaign, Dan. On the other hand, one doesn't want to second-guess the commanders on the spot. They have access to information, they have access to weather conditions, they have access to information that we'll never have here. But another aspect of opening scene of a campaign is there's always disinformation. There's always trigger-happy people on the defender side, and some of the reports may be spurious.
A good caution, General. If and when, underscoring, italicizing the word if and when, the decision is made or has been made to strike, what would be the likely first targets?
First targets, in general, would be ones that would be of a continuing nature and continuing threat to American forces and Allied forces that would operate in the area. And so command and control kinds of things and air defense kinds of things would likely be the first set of targets if and when attacks were ordered.
General, stay with us if you will. I want to go to David Martin, our CBS News Pentagon correspondent. David, what's happening at the Pentagon now? Have you picked up any new information there?
Well, Dan, I do not believe there are any U.S. aircraft over Baghdad at this moment. I'm told that that has not yet happened. Now, maybe somebody got there before he was supposed to. It is possible, I think, that these are not manned aircraft, but Tomahawk cruise missiles. Those are low-flying, subsonic missiles that can be fired from battleships and cruisers that are in the Persian Gulf. And they have a range, I believe, of 1,200 miles, so they could reach Baghdad from the Persian Gulf. Now, obviously, the advantage of using cruise missiles is you're not risking a pilot's life. You could target them against the kinds of air defenses that would threaten a pilot. But a cruise missile carries a relatively small warhead. If the U.S. is going to go after the major command and control centers, the bunkers, if you will, where Saddam Hussein would be directing his own war effort, they're going to probably have to use more powerful weapons, 2,000-pound bombs, and those are carried by stealth fighters, the F-117A, which supposedly can evade any radar. And it may well be that what we are hearing now in Baghdad is an attempt by the U.S. to soften up Iraqi air defenses before any lives of pilots are risked. But I think, beyond question, what we're seeing is the start of a major air campaign that is not going to end tonight and is not going to end tomorrow, but is going to go on for days and days and is going to involve literally thousands of airstrikes against targets throughout Iraq and in Kuwait.
David, we want to be careful as we go along to inform people what we know and don't know and make sure that they have in their minds the difference. David Martin, is it your information at the moment that airstrikes may have begun?
It is my information at the moment that cruise missile attacks have begun. Again, those are unmanned, low-flying missiles. That, I think, would probably qualify in anybody's mind as an airstrike, although U.S. pilots would not technically be in the air over Baghdad. But if these cruise missiles have started landing in Baghdad, it is only a matter probably of minutes, and I'm sure General Dugan could answer this better than I, probably only a matter of minutes before aircraft carrying much larger bombs are overhead Baghdad.
We want to go to Bob Simon, our CBS News correspondent in Saudi Arabia. Bob? Bob Simon?
Dan,
go ahead.
Yes, I do, Dan. The command in Saudi Arabia has not yet announced a thing. However, we've just received a report from an air base in central Saudi Arabia saying that a squadron of F-15s took off not very long ago. At this air base where I'm standing, just outside an air base in eastern Saudi Arabia, there was some 20 aircraft, some fighters that took off in a period of 45 minutes. There's also been an unusual amount of road traffic into the air base over the last hour. Just a while ago, a convoy of what looked like school buses came in, presumably loaded with personnel. We can confirm nothing at this point other than a report from central Saudi Arabia that a squadron of F-15s has taken off heading north. Dan?
Thanks, Bob Simon. Our people in Baghdad, led by Alan Pizzi and Larry Doyle, report that whatever the flashes were in the distance in Baghdad, the flashes for at least the moment seem to have subsided. I emphasize that nobody knew from the beginning what those flashes were. Speculation abounds, possibly anti-aircraft fire, all of that, but speculative. Nobody knows what the flashes were, but whatever they were, for the moment they have subsided, underscoring that David Martin at the Pentagon says it's his information that attacks by cruise missiles may, underline the word if you will, may already have begun. Let's go back to General Michael Dugan, recently retired commander of the United States Air Force. General Dugan, what do you make of this information that the F-15 fighters from central Saudi Arabia have been taking off in fairly large numbers headed north? Any significance to that?
In isolation, Dan, one can't make a judgment about what happened at one base and a number of fighters. As you know, we have conducted extensive training operations both among U.S. forces and among U.S. forces and allies for the past several months that we've been there. And so I can't draw any specific inference from the launch at one base.
Tell us very quickly, if you can, General, what the advantage of firing Tomahawk cruise-style missiles would be if it turns out that they are the first edge of the wedge for air attack. What would be the advantage of that?
As David Martin said, first of all, cruise missiles do not have a pilot associated with them. And one enters a combat arena initially with your enemy having all of its available combat power. Secondly, cruise missiles would be sort of a diversion and a distraction, and they would also attempt to light up the enemy's radar defenses, his early warning devices, and they would tend to highlight where he had his air defense assets. That might be a useful kind of ploy at the opening stages of a major combat.
Thank you very much, General Dugan, and emphasizing General Dugan is now a CBS News consultant and will be with us in the early stages of the air war. If indeed that air war has been launched tonight, there's some indications that it may have been. What we're going to do as we launch into our special CBS News coverage of events around the Persian Gulf, we want to go to Bob Schieffer and General George Christ in a moment for a look at the map at what may be happening. But right now, we're going to have to take care of business and pause for just a moment so our stations all along the line who've not been carrying this broadcast can join us. So stick in here with us. A lot going on in and around the Persian Gulf. We'll have complete details and steady, reliable, dependable coverage for you through the evening. For right now, we pause to let our stations join us. This is Dan Rather, CBS News in New York. What we have done here is interrupt our regular programming. We've interrupted the CBS Evening News to bring you up to date all across the country, to allow some of our stations to join us for the special coverage of events in and around the Persian Gulf. To review very briefly, for those of you who have not been with us, CBS News correspondent David Martin at the Pentagon reports there are some indications, not conclusive proof yet, but some indications that American cruise missiles, these are missiles, they are not aircraft with people in them, may have started to attack Iraq. Now, Martin reported that some time ago. Now the wire services, Associated Press is bulleting from central Saudi Arabia that, and I quote the AP now, war with Iraq began early Thursday. That would be early Thursday Middle Eastern time. As we reported to you here on CBS some time ago, a squadron of U.S. fighter bombers took off from the largest U.S. airbase in central Saudi Arabia. That has now been officially announced by the U.S. military command, according to the Associated Press. Both David Martin and Bob Simon, along with Scott Pelley, reported that a few moments ago. Now, the situation appears to be, at this moment, that war has begun in the Middle East. Let's pause for a second and let that soak in. And then let's go to Bob Schieffer and General George Christ, retired U.S. Marine Corps, to bring us up to date geographically on the situation where what is happening is happening. Bob?
Thank you, Dan, and I think it is important to stress we don't know exactly what is happening. We have very scant information as it is.